Welcome to another Deep Dive Learner. Today, we are taking a hard look at the rapid, honestly, somewhat stealthy integration of artificial intelligence into your local clinic.
Because it is happening at a blistering pace, far faster than the average patient realizes, and faster than a lot of the legal frameworks we're prepared for.
And that is exactly why we are here, to help you, the learner, understand exactly what is going on behind the closed doors of your doctor's office.
Right, because there are new rules now.
Yes, we have a stack of sources today anchored by a brand new official guidance document from AHPRA.
And for those unfamiliar, AHPRA is the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency.
That was not a real podcast. I uploaded an AHPRA document into a free tool, and it generated that podcast in about 30 seconds. And the podcast is just the beginning. From that same document, I'm going to create a week's worth of Instagram content, presentation for the team, and a patient education infographic. All of it in under an hour and 2 AI tools. Let me show you exactly how. If you run an allied health practice, you probably already know this feeling. You have a folder somewhere. Maybe it's your email folder, maybe it's on your desktop, a folder that you've been meaning to organize. It's full of things that you should have read by now. AHPRA guideline updates, NDIS practice standard revisions, that systematic review your colleague sent you about 3 weeks ago, Medicare item number changes. You know you need to read them. You know your team needs to read them. But when? Between back-to-back patients? During a lunch break? And here's the thing that makes it worse. Even if you do find the time to read them, you're still not done. You need to brief your team. You probably should post something on Instagram. And if it's a significant update, you probably need a CPD session or a team presentation. That is 4 separate tasks from one document. Reading it, summarizing it, creating content from it, building a presentation from it. Most practice owners get stuck at step 1 and never make it to the other 3. Today, I'm going to show you how to do all 4 in less than an hour using 2 free AI tools. The 2 tools are Google NotebookLM and also Anthropic's Claude. NotebookLM is free. It's powered by Google's Gemini model. You upload your documents, PDFs, links, YouTube videos, and it creates a notebook that's grounded in those sources. You can ask it questions and it will give you cited answers that link back directly to those sources. You can actually locate the exact passage in the document that source was taken from. But the feature that makes it really special is the audio overview. It generates a full podcast-style conversation between 2 AI hosts who discuss your documents. It's genuinely impressive how natural it sounds. Claude is Anthropic's AI assistant. I use the Pro plan, but you can get a lot done with even just the free version. Most of what I'll show you today will work exactly the same way with the free version. Claude is exceptional at taking structured information and turning it into polished content, presentations, patient-friendly summaries, diagrams. It handles tone shifts better than any other tool that I've tested, which matters when you're converting clinical language into something that's more user-friendly and something that a patient will actually read and understand. The workflow is simple. NotebookLM extracts and summarizes. Claude creates and formats. Let me show you with a real example. Today, I'm going to use the same document all the way through. I've visited the AHPRA website and I can see that there is this document here, meeting your professional obligations when using artificial intelligence in healthcare. So I can see it is a fairly comprehensive document, covers quite a lot of information here. What I'm going to do is just print this page out and save it as a PDF. Cool. So I already have it there, so I'm just going to replace it. And the next thing I will do is go straight into NotebookLM. I'm going to create a new one. And then what I'll do is you see I have a bunch of different options here. You can search the web for new sources, so you can do some of your own secondary research on the fly through NotebookLM. You can upload files, which is what I'll do right now. I'll upload this PDF that I just downloaded. And as you can see, NotebookLM is working straight away to understand and comprehend the information that's in the PDF. And you can see how quickly it works to understand exactly what this document is all about. So AI in healthcare, professional obligations and regulatory guidance. And it's provided a summary here as well. And I can go ahead and start chatting with the document if I'm wanting to find out some more information, if I'm wanting to find out how this document specifically applies to me in terms of what discipline I work in. You can see it's quite intuitive. If you have other documents that you would like to upload, you can also go to add sources and you'll see that same box pop up. And you can once again do some research. You can add some websites or add some YouTube videos. You can add some documents that you currently have in your Google Drive, or you can just copy and paste text straight into the box here. And then that's going to provide a consolidated view of all of the documents that you wanted to analyze. And if you can see on the right here, this is where you start creating. So we've got the document that's being consumed, it's being analyzed and synthesized. And you can, as I said, you can find out some more information there, but then you can also create some other things from here. So the thing that we're going to focus on first is this audio overview. So that's what you heard right at the beginning of the video. That was a podcast that was generated through this audio overview feature. So if I click on this here, you have some options to customize the audio. So what you can set up here is a deep dive, which is a lively conversation between two hosts. So they're connecting the topics and connecting the sources together. You can create a brief overview so you can grasp those ideas quickly. You have a critique where the two hosts will critique the sources that have been provided and provide you with some feedback. So this is great if you're producing a report or you're producing something that you're going to be sharing with other people and you want to get some early critiques so that you can improve it. We have debate. So this would be a debate between the two hosts. So one would take one position, the other would take another position, and then they would debate the two. So some interesting ways of slicing and dicing the PDF here, but we'll stick with the default, which is the deep dive. You can see here as well that you can customize it for languages. So this would be helpful if you have, let's say if there's something that you're wanting to communicate to a patient, but maybe their native language is Mandarin, for example, then you would be able to choose the language and essentially give them a podcast style breakdown of what you're trying to communicate with them. You can define the length, so short, default, long. Default is typically about 15 to 20 minutes, I believe. Long can go all the way up to an hour, and short is about maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Ask the AI to focus on something specific. So let's say, for example, you wanted to focus on what this means specifically for physiotherapists. But what we'll do is we'll just run it. Amazing. So it's saying here to come back in a few minutes. What this is really helpful for is accelerated learning. I've used this myself to, let's say I have a new client and it's a specific subject matter that I'm unfamiliar with. I would do a whole bunch of secondary research, collect a lot of documents together. Maybe they provide me with some things to read to get up to speed. And it's been really helpful to add all of that, generate a 30-minute podcast that I can listen to whilst going for a walk. And that's going to help accelerate my learning and help me really get up to speed with what I'm about to encounter. And then it will also help me identify some gaps so that I can create some follow-up questions to prepare workshops and prepare for interviews and things like that. Just while this is working away here, I'm just going to ask NotebookLM some specific questions to help get it started on the next task. So I've asked it here, what are the 5 key obligations for allied health practitioners when using AI according to this document? So let's see what it says here. Alrighty, so the 5 key principles obligations. So accountability. Practitioners remain fully responsible for delivering safe and quality care regardless of technology used. Good one. So understanding. So you need to understand the AI tool well enough to use it safely. Transparency. Practitioners should inform their patients and clients about the use of AI and addressing any concerns they might have. Informed consent. That makes sense. Getting consent before recording anything. And then ethical and legal usage. Practitioners must uphold various professional ethical legal standards, which include ensuring confidentiality. Cool. So we've got some interesting things that we need to be aware of. Now, the second question I'm going to ask here is, what are the most common mistakes or risks the document warns about? Cool. So the document warns health practitioners against several key risks and potential mistakes. So failing to apply human oversight, big one. Ignoring limitations and inappropriate context. So yeah, context is extremely important with AI. If you don't have the right context, you're likely going to see hallucinations. So creating the right context is absolutely critical. Inadvertent privacy and data breaches is another big one. So making sure that you're not giving personal private health information. If you're looking to do patient summaries, don't include any kind of patient IDs or names or date of births or anything that's sensitive. Recording without consent. So that's another big one. And then as you can appreciate, some AIs have bias. So just being aware and not overlooking these potential biases that it could compromise the health and safety of patients with diverse backgrounds. So that's another one that's interesting. So making proper insurance or regulatory compliance. Cool. And then another one here about insurance and making sure that you are compliant to the various regulations, particularly TGA. And depending on what state and territory you're in, there are going to be specific laws that you will need to comply with. So that is important. Cool. And now we're going to ask one more question here. So what are the 2 or 3 statistics or specific statements that would be compelling in a social media post? Cool. And whilst that's cooking away, I can see that our deep dive has fully generated. So I'm going to play it.
Picture this. You're sitting in your doctor's office. You're wearing one of those crinkly paper gowns, and you're explaining this weird, persistent ache in your shoulder. And suddenly you realize something is just, missing.
Like the actual sound of frantic typing.
Yes, exactly. The typing. I mean, for the last decade, we've gotten so used to doctors basically just staring at a screen, right?
Yeah.
Furiously inputting data while we talk. But today, your doctor's just looking at you, making eye contact, actually listening.
Which is how it should be, ideally.
Right. But it makes you wonder, are they just suddenly the most attentive physician on earth? Or is there an invisible artificial brain sitting in the room quietly taking notes for them?
It's a slightly eerie thought when you put it that way, but that invisible entity in the room is rapidly becoming the reality of modern healthcare.
Yeah.
It is fundamentally changing the dynamic of the doctor-patient relationship as we know it.
Well, welcome to this deep dive. We've got a fascinating document on the table today. It's an official, brand new piece of guidance from AHPRA.
That's the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, for those who might not know the acronym.
Right. And their mission with this document is to clearly outline how doctors and health practitioners can actually meet their professional obligations when they start bringing AI into their practices.
Which is happening a lot faster than people think.
Oh, absolutely. So we are going to figure out exactly what the rules of engagement are when silicon meets the stethoscope. Because if you are a patient, and we all are, your care is likely changing right now, and you really need to know how.
I'll definitely recommend giving this one a go. I won't play the full 22 minutes of this podcast, so this video would go forever. It is free to try. It's pretty easy to set up. And one thing that's also amazing with this too is you can actually interact with the speakers. So I've just noticed here that last message that I typed in here as well around the 3 statistics. So it's got here recording patient consultations with AI without explicit informed consent. If public generative software is used, personal information becomes public domain. TGA approval of the tool does not change the practitioner's responsibility. So cool. So I've got a few things here that I think we've already heard most of this before, so we're not really learning anything new there, but it seems like it's doubled down on these 3 quite important things to remember.
Oh, hey, I think our listeners got something to say.
Hey, let's say if I wanted to start recording my consultations, what does express consent mean? What does that actually look like in practice?
That is a great question.
And honestly, a really important one.
You're jumping right to the core issue of consent and transparency here.
What you are expressing is a need for clarity on the recording rules.
And as a patient, you have every right to that clarity, especially when we talk about AI scribing tools.
We were just about to talk about how the dynamic is changing.
But to answer you directly, if you want to record the consultation, your doctor needs to provide very clear information.
Absolutely. The guidance from AHPRA, which we are discussing today, is strong on the principle of transparency.
They say the health practitioner has to inform patients about any use of AI.
And they need to consider any concerns you raise.
The document is very explicit about informed consent, especially regarding AI scribing tools.
Because that involves the input of your highly sensitive personal data.
The doctor needs to actively ask you for your permission.
And ideally, that response needs to be noted in your health record.
We'll talk about this more later, but there are even criminal implications if consent is not obtained before recording a private conversation.
So that expresses consent you mentioned is critical.
It's not just a polite request. It's a legal obligation when personal data is involved.
The key is that the doctor must tell you how the AI works, how it collects your data, and how it uses your personal information.
And this is particularly true if they're using any kind of public generative AI software.
Because if a tool is recording your session, that could potentially make your personal information public domain, as we'll discuss soon.
So if you want to record, you absolutely must have that explicit, informed conversation with your doctor first.
It ensures you have control over your data.
That's the main takeaway. Okay, let's unpack this now, picking up right where we left off.
That's a perfect segue into the challenges of this new world.
I'm going to take a look at the responses that I was provided here. So what we're going to do next, so we've synthesized the report, we've understood some key questions that we wanted to have answered. We've also been able to produce the podcast. I've also shown you how you can interact with the podcast as well. So you can ask very specific questions. If you're in a hurry and you want to just get to the point very quickly, then you can obviously go ahead and interrupt. I'm just going to copy and paste the information that from each of the questions. I'm going to put that straight into Claude. Now, what I've included here is a very, very short prompt that says, you are a social media copywriter for an Australian physiotherapist practice. Based on the following research extracts, write 5 Instagram carousel posts. Each post needs a hook. So a hook is really a very, very short, compelling sentence that's going to immediately make them act. And you can see here as well, so 5 to 7 content slides, a caption of 150 to 200 words in patient-friendly language, and 10 to 15 relevant hashtags. So you can see here we've covered the broad spectrum. Some of the things that might be interesting to include as well that I always include in is actually just to use Australian English. Alrighty, so I'm just going to copy and paste in the rest of the responses that we got previously. Alrighty, and I'm going to hit run. I'll quickly just demonstrate as well is that we have a number of different models here. We've got Opus, which is the most capable model. This is the type of model that is used for coding. So you find that a lot of developers will now use Opus to do bulk of their development and coding work. Sonnet is I'd say you would probably use this maybe 80% of the time. So this would be used for everyday tasks. It's quite capable. They recently upgraded Sonnet and Opus to 4.6. So you would find you get some really good output from both of those models. And Haiku is something that you would use for very quick, snappy, basic tasks. If you have an image with some text and you want to extract all of the text and turn that into something you can copy and paste, then I would use Haiku. If you're short on time and you need something done very quickly, then I would definitely lean on Haiku. I might just also update this to Sonnet instead of Opus, because I think that Sonnet's good enough to handle this one. So you can see Claude is thinking, it's thinking about what it needs to do. It's reading through all of the content that I provided, and it's going to start structuring the carousels. Alrighty, so you can see what is happening here, Claude is doing, is it's creating each of the slides as a website. So you can see all of the 6 slides together on the one single website. This will be a local website that you can access just through your desktop. So this won't be on the web. This will just be local to your computer so that you can have a look and maybe ask it for some changes, and you can get an understanding of what it might look like if you were to post it to social media. Alrighty, so let's open this up. Okay, so we can see the carousel here. So you can see up the top, we've got the different posts. So post 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So post 1 of 5. So did you know AI is entering your physio clinic? Here are the 5 things. And then you can see if you were to do that, you've got here principle 1, accountability, principle 2, understanding, principle 3, transparency, informed consent, ethics and law. And then at the final slide, you have the right to ask questions about any technology used in your care. And then you would have this as the caption that you would put underneath the carousel. And then you've got some hashtags to get some reach. And then if I click here, another post, so this is talking specifically about the TGA approval. Amazing. So I think what's impressive about this is we've just generated a full week's worth of content that we could potentially use on social media. So 5 posts, 1 for every single day of the week. It only took us about maybe 10 minutes of prompting to get here. Obviously, the more time you spend on this, the higher quality. You might see some things that don't quite resonate with you that you can go back and forth with Claude on to iterate through. You can see this is just the first version. Now, what I've just followed up with Claude here is I've asked it to write 3 LinkedIn posts for a healthcare AI consultant. So I'm using the SCQA format. And what that essentially means is we're asking it to write the LinkedIn posts in such a way that it defines the situation, the complication, the question, and the answer. So that's what SCQA means. We obviously wanted to use a professional tone, and we want each of these posts to position the author as someone who helps allied health practices navigate AI safely. So this would be if you're a thought leader in your industry, you have adopted AI into your practice, and you're wanting to spread the word. And you can see here it's done a pretty good job. So it's got post 1, consent blind spot. So it's all about the consent and the importance of it. Number 2 is talking about the TGA approval, specifically around using AI to generate clinical notes. And also this issue here around using AI to process patient data and how that can present a serious risk. Of course, and then it also talks about down the bottom here who each of the posts are targeting. So the first one's targeting practice owners who are in the early adoption phase. And the hook, the thing that gets their attention, is the legal risk. And the second is clinicians who feel covered by regulatory approval. And then the third one targets the broader audience. So Claude is quite smart to do this kind of target marketing with its messaging, just to make sure that it's focused and that it's designed to resonate with different audiences. So you can see how using Claude and using Gemini in this way, you can really take a source piece of content and slice it and dice it in many different ways to create original content. Not that you created it yourself, but it's original content that you can use to increase your own personal brand. And it's essentially 3 different LinkedIn posts, 3 different topics, 3 different audiences, different tones, and it's all sourced from the exact same document. Now we're going to move on to something that will save practice managers a hell of a lot of time. And this is creating presentations that you can present to your team. So I've written this prompt here that says create a 12-slide CPD presentation for an allied health team meeting on AI use in clinical practice. So it's obviously based on the AHPRA guidelines that we've been discussing. It talks about including a title slide, overview guidelines, key obligations, etc., etc. There'll be a QA piece at the end. Now, when we think about presentations, normally we think about PowerPoint documents or using Google Slides. One of the things that I would actually recommend if you're wanting to create quick presentations, I'd actually recommend putting at the end here, use HTML and CSS. What that means is that we're creating a website. So we're creating a website presentation deck that looks like something that you would find in PowerPoint. However, it's all going to be web-based, and it means that you can iterate on it quite quickly. So instead of you having to put this into a PowerPoint deck, and if you see something that doesn't look right, you will need to kind of manually pull it into shape. You can actually produce a version with Claude, and you can iterate on it through the chat interface. So I'll show you what that means in a second. So Claude's already well acquainted with the documents. It's just produced the social media content for us. So it knows exactly what it needs to write about. And you can see here, it's producing the code, very similar to what it did when it was creating the social media carousels. You can see it's working very fast. It's only been about 10 to 15 seconds and it's already generated quite a lot so far. Okay, great. Looks like we're done here. So here's the full 12-slide CPD presentation. Here's what's included. So I've got the slide structure and the controls down the bottom here. Let's open this up. Alrighty, so you can see that's pretty much on the money. Alrighty, so we've got using in allied health practices. So you see here, so as I mentioned before, this is a HTML file that you can open in your browser. And as you can see here, I can click left and right to navigate through each of the different slides. But it looks like it's done a pretty good job. So if I read through it, so using AI safely in allied health practices, what every physiotherapist needs to know about AI tools. You can see here the length of the presentation, the amount of slides, who it's for. We've also got here a button down the bottom for speaker notes. So that's interesting. It has some notes that you can read to present to your team. And if we just click through, so it talks about why we're having the conversation. What does AI actually mean? Different applications and use cases of AI. It's got here an overview of the guidance document. So it's breaking down the core themes that were mentioned in the document. Cool. And then it's going into detail into some of them here. So it's got accountability, understanding, and transparency. So a bit more information about what that actually means. Informed consent, common mistakes, and then 3 things to remember, practical do's and don'ts, self-assessment, key takeaways, and then a opportunity for anyone to ask questions. So you can see something like this would normally take hours, not just to think about the content, but then to also actually go ahead and put this into PowerPoint, slides that look compelling and engaging. But as you can see with this process that we've just followed, it's only been roughly about 20 to 30 minutes to put this together end to end. That's including all the social media content as well. So that was super, super quick. This is something that I would definitely recommend. And as I said before, this is really helpful for CPD meetings. Alrighty, so now what I'd like to do is take a stab at generating some infographics. So this is something that you can use for your presentations, or you can use it for social media. So I've written out a prompt here that says, create an infographic summarizing the 5 key obligations for AI use in healthcare. So clean, modern design, numbered list format with icons. So let's see what we get. And whilst that's cooking away, what I'll also do is try the exact same thing with NotebookLM. So you can see here they have a infographic option. So I'm going to click on that. You can see here that there are some different options: orientation, landscape, portrait, square. I think we'll go with landscape for this one. And it's asking what visual style. So you can see that there are lots of options to choose from. Go with something that fits your brand the most. I'm just going to make it auto select for now. And then I'm going to leave the level of detail as standard. I'm going to use the exact same prompt that I use for Claude. So create an infographic summarizing applications. What I might do actually, I might change this to portrait. And it looks like Claude is done here. Okay, interesting. So it's generated this poster for us. So AI healthcare, 5 key obligations. So you can see it's retained that same branding style, which is convenient for us. And it has the 5 obligations there. I think this is, once again, something that you may want to spend a little bit of time going back and forth with Claude. There might be some certain things that don't look right. And it's just a good habit to get into. For example, this text that's sitting in the background seems to be a bit out of place. So I can see here that it's sitting in the background, doesn't really need to be there. So I've just written a new prompt here in the header. So that will be this green bit here. We call the header. There's some text sitting in the background that looks out of place. It says, so I've just copied and pasted exactly what the text says. And then I've asked it to please remove. So this is how you can engage with AI. You can just give it instructions like it was a person. So you can see here, it's provide an update, remove the vertical label, done. There you go. So that only took about 10 seconds to do. The vertical text label has been removed. You can see it's disappeared. And then this is the old version, but I'm going to refresh the page and just, cool. You can see we've got the old version here, and I've opened up a new tab with the new version, and that text is gone. So once again, if you get an undesirable result, it's pretty easy for you to go back and forth with Claude to tell it exactly what you don't like, and it will go ahead and make these updates for you. Alrighty, so let's just say if you wanted to print this out and put this on your wall, there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. If you're wanting to do it in a very, very quick way, let's say if you're not too concerned about the quality, what you can do is on your browser, you can zoom out, getting the full document on one screen, and you can just take a screenshot. So this would be the most basic way of doing it. This is probably not the way that I'd recommend doing it if you're wanting it to be high quality, but it is one way if you're wanting to do it in a very quick way. If you're wanting to find out how to do it in a more professional way, please drop a comment below and I'll create a separate tutorial on how to do that. And you can see that screenshot has saved on my desktop. And if I zoom in, you can see that the text is still legible. You can still read it. If you were to print this out and put this on your wall, or if you were to print this out and send this to your colleagues, as I said, that's just one option. There are other options. Probably not for the scope of this video, so please drop a comment below and I can show you how to do it properly. Alrighty, now back to Notebook. We can still see that it's still working on the slide deck, but it's also created these infographics for us. So let's have a look and see what we got. So the one thing that you provided Claude with our brand style guide, so it's made it consistent all the way through. We didn't do that for NotebookLM, but I think they've done a decent job here. As you can see, it's exactly the same points that we covered. I think from a content point of view, they look to be in a good place. Now, the great thing with Google LM is that you can actually just download this one. So yeah, so this is a much better graphic quality if you were to use this for your office. And just to show the side-by-side comparison, from a quality standpoint, you can see that what NotebookLM has produced is a lot higher quality. So if you're not too fussed about it being off-brand, then I'd recommend going with NotebookLM to generate these graphics for you. Cool, and we can see it's also finished this slide deck as well. So this, as I showed you before, is something that Claude did a pretty good job at creating for us. Now we're going to see what NotebookLM has created here. So we click through the AI landscape. It has the AHPRA framework on one slide, very easy to consume. And then it goes into more detail about the accountability and understanding. Talks about there being human in the loop. So all that means is there needs to be, AI can do its work, but it can't make the final decision. It needs a human to read through the output and approve or decline. It talks about transparency and consent, the ethical and legal guardrails, common mistakes, do's and don'ts, and a deep dive into AI scribing in practice. So, we need to ask for consent up front, then we're going to record the conversation, and then we're generating the AI notes. And then this is where it's super critical. We need that human in the loop, that human review step to read through the notes that the AI has drafted to make sure they're all true and correct. There hasn't been any hallucinations. You can obviously edit those notes and then review them and approve them and then finalize. And then that will be sent through to Clinico. And then a compliance checklist at the end. And then it's ending on a nice inspiring statement that really highlights the fact that AI is really there just to assist. And then the practitioner still has the responsibility of treating the patient. And then any final questions. Cool. I actually think that Notebook did a great job here of generating the slides. And I think what's even better about this is the very fact that you can download this as a PowerPoint document so that you can edit it in a tool that you're more familiar with. Right, I'm just going to quickly recap what we've done here. So we've taken this original document. So this is the meeting of professional obligations when using AI in healthcare. So we've taken that one document, we've used NotebookLM to analyze the document, synthesize it, allow us to query and ask questions about it, to clarify certain parts so we can gain a better understanding of it. We've created a 15 to 20 minute podcast that we can listen to when we're going for a walk, when we're driving home. We can share it with different members of our team to keep all of us on the same page and informed about these new obligations that we have. And then we've moved some of that insight that we've found through the document into Claude, and we've been able to generate social media posts. So we've generated 5 social media carousels for Instagram. So that would be one post for every single day of the week. And then we've also generated 3 LinkedIn posts that are targeted to different audiences. They have different hooks, different ways of compelling, subtle differences in the information that it's bringing across to make sure that we're positioning ourselves as thought leaders in the industry, making sure that we have the credibility, that we've done the research, we understand the content, we're the ones to follow to find out more about this specific topic. And then we've created a 12-slide CPD presentation that we can present to our team. We've been able to present different versions of that. One that's fairly generic, another one that's tied to our brand style guide that we can still edit and iterate quite quickly and easily. And we've also compared the output quality of the two that we've used today. So we've used obviously Claude, and then we've used NotebookLM, and then we've been able to see from a quality perspective, workflow perspective, in terms of how quickly things can happen, how easy it is to update, things like that. And we've been able to see the quality that has been produced in the way of infographics, and then also those presentations and social media content. So the total time that I've spent on this is probably about an hour or so. 1 hour every single week, and you have yourself enough content to post on social media. And just a quick note on data safety, because I know this really matters to you. At no stage in this pipeline are we using any patient data. We are uploading publicly available documents, the AHPRA guidelines, the NDIS standards, published research, Medicare descriptors. The consumer tiers of NotebookLM and Claude are perfectly fine for this. NotebookLM doesn't use any of your uploaded documents for training its models. Your data stays in your notebook. Claude's free and paid plans don't actually use your data to train their models either. I think the rules are pretty simple here. Never upload documents containing patient information. So guidelines, policies, research, and de-identified content, perfectly fine. If you stick to that, there's zero compliance risk. Cool. So if you want to try this today, I'd recommend starting with just one document. Pick the one that's been sitting in your inbox for a while. Upload it to NotebookLM, generate the podcast, listen to it, then open Claude and create just one piece of content. A social media post, a team summary, whatever's most useful to you right now. I've put all the prompts that I've used today in the description below. They're free, copy them, use them. Now, if you like what you saw today with the social media content and you want to start doing this every week without copying and pasting, I've built a content and social media creator specifically for allied health practices. It's a Claude project with various commands like content calendar, social, and blog. You type in one command and it generates a full month of content, compliant, with captions, hashtags, and posting times. Link in the description as well. Subscribe if this was useful. I publish practical AI walkthroughs for allied health weekly. And if you're running an allied health practice and you want to automate the clinical side too, treatment notes, recalls, invoicing, the Clinico connector gives Claude direct access to your Clinico account. I have a link for that in the description as well. Please subscribe if this was useful. I do videos like this every single week about how allied health practices can start implementing AI. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.